broadcasting live out of a basement in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox City's Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core.
My next guests are a power pop rock. I don't know exactly how to define them. We will ask when they're on. A band out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. They've been together for almost 4 decades. They're still going strong. I'd like to welcome Fun with Atoms to Fox City's Core. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Hey, good morning.
Great, good morning.
We were kind of talking a bit before the show started. I said we have a lot of ground to cover today. So almost 4 decades together. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Like, did the band officially, the official start time of the band is 1985? Is that correct, or was it before?
Before. We'd played in a cover band together, and that morphed into the original band. So more like 83, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. Rick and I have been playing together a few years before that and another band, so I think we started Rick at, what was that, like 77?
Yeah, I think it was that early. Well, he lived right behind me, you know, kind of in the same neighborhood. And it just seemed like in our neighborhood, there were little garage bands all over the place. And he was in one, I was in one. And we kind of got together in the neighborhood first. And then that evolved into some serious bands where we started playing in clubs and things like that. After that, John Doe and the Doodads, that was a band. I don't know if some people might remember that band, but that was a pretty serious cover band that we played in for about 3 years. And during that time, we started writing together, knowing that we wanted to do something after that and get into original music, which became Fun with Atoms.
I was one of their biggest fans. I'd go out to the bars and see John Doe, and a friend of mine got me connected with them once their drummer left, so that's how we all got together.
Yeah.
So you had a similar taste in music when you started kind of writing originals together. Mm-hmm. And how would you describe your music when you started writing? Because it's kind of got that jangly guitar. You hear the word jangly a lot, and a lot of high-end sparkle to it.
Yeah, you know, coming off John Doe and the Doodads, that band was largely influenced by early MTV and a lot of that type of music, the alternative music, and then REM hit, and just that whole scene after that we were really influenced by, and I think maybe some of the jangly comes from that, the REM rank and file, a little bit of maybe an alt country influence early on. We just loved that type of music, and limited by it being a 3-piece, I think, as well. That sort of dictated the sound that we would develop with bass drums and guitar.
When you started writing the originals, what was the scene like up in the Green Bay area? Was it dominantly cover bands, or was there sort of an explosion with original music at the time? Like, there had to be something that kind of made you decide to start writing original songs.
Yeah, I don't know. It was, there wasn't a whole lot going on. It was the disco scene had taken over a lot of the cool clubs that we were playing, and so I think it was more like there weren't a lot of live bands, period, and we're, you know, why not write our own stuff, you know, and play as long as there's limited gigs, and you know, do what we want to do and go our own way, the way we want to play, and you know, it worked out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, you know, and having a venue, too, that helped us with the original music. We made a big investment in a Tascam Porta studio. I don't know if you remember those, but it was a cassette tape, and you could actually record 4 tracks and overdub. So we totally ruined that thing. We put so many hours on it with different iterations of our original music that became Main Street. And then we had a chance to play, but there's a club called Lefties that a lot of people still remember, and we were so fortunate to make that our home base and really hone our craft and play our original music and tweak things a little bit before we recorded. But yeah, they were all about original music at the time. And actually, Appleton was kind of a hotbed of good original music too, and Madison, Milwaukee, and a lot of those bands would come up and play at Lefties, and we developed a friendship and kind of a good peer relationship with a lot of those people.
It wasn't really a conscious decision to do it. It was something that we were doing together anyway, and it was just nice to have the people that would come out to see us at Lefties and clubs around the state that would have bands come down and play original music.
Is the Lefties building still standing yet? Is something else, or
It's something else.
it's something else?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a warehouse or something
Yeah.
for business.
Well, so then you
Still smells like, I think, cosmetically it looks different,
Yeah.
but it still smells
Yeah.
like Lefties.
Yeah.
So like the Green Bay scene has kind of gone through some changes, and then they had was it rock and roll high school? They called it something else too. Concert Cafe.
Concert
Yeah.
Cafe.
Concert Cafe.
Now they've got the Lyric Room and some other clubs up there. So is
Yeah.
it like seeing kind of the evolution of the scene up there? Is it kind of just? I mean, does it feel the same to you when you go to somewhere like the Concert Cafe versus Lefties was back in the 80s?
Yeah, Concert Cafe, we kind of, that was a whole different scene for us. We weren't really, I think we played there once or twice,
Yeah.
but that core of people that wanted to see live music was there. And so that's, that was one place that was happening. But it just seemed to kind of move around. So yeah, the feeling is about the same. It's just different place to go. And it's one club closes, another one opens, same vibe.
So when Main Street was ready to record, you went you were playing with a band called Spooner, right? A lot up in the Green Bay area. And of course, Butch Vig was in Spooner. And how did you guys get kind of pulled down to Smart Studios down in Madison to record?
We had booking agents out of Madison, so we got to play at a lot of really cool Madison clubs and Milwaukee clubs as well as Green Bay. But this band Spooner just kept hanging around in our circles, and we absolutely loved that band.
Yeah.
They were fantastic, man. They would just come out and hit the stage on fire, and we looked up to them a lot. And so we ended up sharing the bill quite often with them at. What was that big place in Madison?
Well, Headliners.
Headliners, and
yeah.
And so they were up at Lefties too once in a while, and Butch said, we have this little studio in Madison, and we'd really like to record you guys. So we went down there, and we started that project down there. We thought, well, it's going to be low budget, let's go down there and do everything live and.
Take a weekend.
Yeah.
We'll knock it out because we had 2 days worth of money, and and then Butch is so nice to work with and really perfectionistic. He said, "Well, slow down, guys. Let's take our time and let's do this thing right." And so we ended up, taking months really.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought we'd get the whole project done in the weekend, and we got bass and drums done. It's basically like, let's step back, get it done right. I think we had the rhythm tracks done in that weekend, but then went down to finish it.
So that was recorded on tape at the
Yeah.
time. So, I mean, were you doing you did the drums and the bass together, or you did the drums separate to like a click track or something? And then
No, it was live.
Yeah,
so
we
we got
played together.
rhythm, guitar, bass, and drums in the takes, and then we working with 8 tracks, so the drums were on maybe 5 of those tracks, how many, and then they'd bounce them down, so then you'd have bass, and then stereo drums on the 3 tracks of the 8, and so then we'd go back to do the overdubs to fill the other 5 tracks. But
And so what was supposed to be 2 days ended up turning into a big, long
half a
record.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a while, but it was cool that we just slowed it down.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I think he didn't want to dampen our spirits, and but he was very diplomatic and very encouraging, and he just kind of slowed us down and said, let's do some scratch vocals, scratch guitars, and we'll come back and overdub. At that time, we really didn't know much about recording and the process.
Yeah.
But we ended up getting good rhythm tracks, really good rhythm tracks, and then the guitars would be overdubbed later over the top of the rhythm tracks.
Did he have any like input while you guys were recording? Like, did he maybe say to Dan like, "Hey, play this part differently, or can you try this?"
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I mean, the number of times we had to redo vocal parts is like, oh my God, I think I got one more in me.
Yeah.
This is like take 50 of, running over the same vocal part. And he was a perfectionist. And, it's like, I remember him, Butch saying, there'd be a harmony. It said, sounds a little beady to me. Can you try it one more time? And it's like, well, And it turned out really well because he was such a perfectionist, and it's like I couldn't hear.
Being on tape, too, it's not like he was saving each take. Like now he can just, do 20, save them all.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, well, that one's getting deleted, right?
Yeah.
So let's try it again.
Quick decision.
Yeah.
We want to keep this or not? Because we're losing it.
Did you guys keep the original tapes from that session? Do you still have them?
I'm kind of an archivist. We'd get mixtapes to bring home and listen. And so I've got a batch of cassettes that have trial mixes. And,
we do have the original.
Yeah, we have the original masters.
Yeah.
But yeah, did you ever hear of a plate reverb?
Yeah.
Kind of an old school thing. There was one in a back room, and we'd be working on vocals, and he'd open the door and go in there, and you could hear this big clang. I think it was a clamp that he had to unlock on this plate reverb, and it just sounded wonderful in our headphones. And so there's a lot of that on the recording too. It's kind of an old school analog. Mm-hmm. Wonderful reverb. I don't think they even use those anymore. But that would make us real happy when he would go in there.
Yeah, we're going to add a little reverb. Bang!
Was that at the warehouse or the place across the street? That was it. That was the original warehouse.
Yeah, we were at the Gishold building, a big wide open space, open windows to keep it cool in there during the summer, and then we'd shut the windows to block out traffic during critical recording.
Yeah.
Close the windows, turn off the air.
But yeah, it was really a cool time for us. People would drop by. We recorded a lot at night, usually wrapping it up by midnight or so, and people would stop by. Members of Spooner and members of Rousers and some of the other Madison bands, and it was sort of a clubhouse at the time. Everyone was very encouraging, and they'd stop by to kind of hear what we were doing and drink our beer.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it was just such a creative time. There was an artist down the hall, little studio. He'd pop over, and he ended up doing some of the album covers for some of the bands. I think Wildest Dreams. Did you?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, pretty cool. Some cool people.
So as far as like your mindset in that situation, you're recording your first album. You're at this still really unknown small studios in Madison. When you were doing that, was it something that you guys were thinking, well, this is going to be an album that somebody's going to end up reprinting in like 25 years down the road? I mean, that couldn't have been going through your head at that point.
No, I thought it was going to sell 1 million copies.
Yeah,
that's my 20-year-old mindset was.
This business manager guys.
Well, and Dan and Rick, you guys do a lot of like really tight harmonies, and you mentioned in the studio Butch was having you redo a lot of that. Were those harmonies pretty much written before you went into the studio, or when you were actually hearing yourself on tape?
Well, that was the benefit of having the Porta Studios. That
so you could demo that out that way?
We rehearsed all the harmony stuff beforehand. But, I don't think we did much on the fly for that, like writing anything in the studio, except for maybe correcting parts that we thought sounded great live. And then you get them on tape and find out, oh, man, that is not good.
Well, then the album cover, where was this shot?
The sea rice coal piles right next to the Mason Street Bridge in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
I think we're technically trespassing.
Is that still there? The coal mine?
I think they are. Yeah, they've been talking about moving them for about 50 years, but they're still there, I think.
Any talk of doing like a picture creation side by side?
That's the first time hearing of it.
That would be scary, wouldn't it? We look a little different.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be cool, yeah.
Well, so then, we've got other albums to talk about as well, but then this was like remastered and reissued in 2015? Was that about right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tim Beekler helped with the graphics on that, and then Brady Emerson actually spearheaded that to get us going in that right direction. But that was hard to recreate. Myron Hansen did the original graphics on that, and then it was kind of a school project. I remember him taking the photo, and then they put like an overlay on that to make it look grainy, and Tim did a good job of scanning through that and getting the package together.
Yeah, 'cause I guess you didn't have original artwork from the 80s that was like the right quality and all that.
I had a few things, but I think he took scans from the album, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they had a copy of the record and did their magic now with Photoshop and things like that.
Yeah, it's a great record. I'm really glad that they reprinted it. And did you remaster it off the original tapes, or how did you go about with as far as the music goes, getting that remastered?
So Mike Zirkel he's a fantastic engineer, and he was still at Smart Studio. Actually, when we did our Smart album, we mixed it with Mike, but at the time he baked the tapes, so we had the original master tapes, and after a while the magnetic particles deteriorate a little bit. So there's a method where you can actually put it in the oven. I think they did that with George Martin's original tapes too, when they put out the Beatles stuff. It's kind of scary to do that, to put the tapes in the oven, but you sort of realign the magnetic particles, and then everything sounds good again. So anyway, the tapes got baked, digitized, and then we mastered those.
Did like Justin Perkins master that?
Justin did, yeah. Yeah, he did a fantastic job.
It's a good guy to go to when you need mastering work done for
yeah.
sure. Mystery Room.
Really, really good.
Were you pleased with the remaster when that came out? And what was the response like? Did a lot of fans from when the original album came out come back around? It had to be a little nostalgic for them to...
Yeah, it was, yeah.
No, yeah, I think so. Yeah, it gave it to Brady, put it in the exclusive company. I think the package turned out. I'm really happy with it. I think it turned out great. And,
I like the fact that there's more bass on remaster.
yeah,
There was a limit, when you printing the vinyl. We had a choice of, do you want to add another song or do you want more bass
You took
on
more
the
bass?
record? Because there's a limited amount of space in the grooves, so we put another song on.
Yeah, we actually 2 tracks on here. We learned a lot about magnetic, about the grooves on the record, but apparently you can only put a certain number of minutes per side and songs per side, where you do lose the bass response. So we had 2 songs that were long. We used to play the songs live, and they were super long. National Geographic Girl and I'll Be There. So due to space constraints, Butch said, let's chop some out of both of these songs. And it was a tape recording. It was actually magnetic tape recording analog, and so he was a master at editing right on tape. He would take a little grease pencil and take the hubs on the recording machine, and he'd listen for a kick drum, put a little grease pencil mark there, and then like a minute later he'd put another one there. Wow. And you'd take like a minute. So he took about a minute out of each of those songs.
Yeah.
And a minute on tape is like ring, ring.
It's like it's a human...
reeling out feet of
Yeah.
tape.
So the tape would spill onto the floor. He'd make the first razor cut and then run the capstan, and in a minute's worth of tape, which looks like a lot when it's on the floor, it would pile up on the floor. It's like, man,
That
can be
wet
nervous.
16 inches per second.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of room for error.
Yeah.
And then he put it together precisely on that bass drum, and it worked out really good. So anyway, a couple secrets about the record. Those were shortened about a minute each.
Yeah.
But they were good live that long, but not on a record.
When you were at Smart recording that, did you take any video or photos of your sessions?
Yes.
Yeah, Kurt's security. We all look at Kurt. He's the saver.
I am.
The archivist.
We lost.
I got the basement. Yeah. No, I
Moving
do.
around, I think we lost all our stuff. But no.
Had a nice little point and shoot Minolta 35 millimeters. So I've got some shots from that time.
And we're glad he's the archivist.
Yeah, right.
Did any of those pictures make it into the documentary they did?
They
with Bart?
did, yeah. Any black and white photo of us in the documentary, that's the ones that I had taken.
Very cool. And then the album Main Street came out on Boat Records, which was run by somebody from Spooner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dave Benton. Dave Benton, great guy, good friend of ours, great guitar player. That's why I have a couple shrink wrap copies. These were gone really, and when Brady contacted us, it's like we didn't know anyone really even cared, and he wanted to put it back out. And after a while, it was kind of fun that it was back out because I think we each had one copy, open copy. Mm-hmm. But then I was at one of the record conventions in Green Bay, ran into Dave Benton, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And he said, "Come back next time. I've got something for you." And he had a case of unopened copies of Main Street. I think when he was cleaning his record store out, he found a box and generously gave those to us. So now we each have a couple copies.
How was the response when the album came out and you actually got that physical copy? Because I'm guessing back when that came out, there weren't a lot of bands that were putting out albums in the area, original albums. I don't know if that's right or not. Maybe you can confirm. Or
A handful of, I couldn't tell you, but yeah.
Now it's like you can just print a CD and you've got a CD, but having a physical album, that had to be a pretty huge thing back in '85. I mean, did they sell really well at the time? Was it hard to sell an album?
It was probably more airplay than sales at that time. College radio was really big, and thanks to Boat Records and Dave and Doug and Butch and that group, they really helped distribute this out widely to a lot of college radio in the United States and Canada. So we were fortunate to get a lot of airplay on some of the big stations, Lawrence, Kansas, and some of those really important radio stations at the time that played alternative rock and roll. So we got a pretty good distribution channel going there, and I don't know how many we sold actually.
It's a whole process you think you're going to make all kinds of money when you do this. And then reality is you just do it for promo. And from that promo, we got into some of the NACA conventions, and we were playing colleges in Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And then you try to branch out from there, I guess.
Yeah.
So in reality, you do that to promote yourself. And so we might have broken even on what we spent on making the album, but then the fun of playing and getting out, growing the band is there because we had the album.
Then you didn't have a release out after that until Northern Distortion, like 10 years later. So why was there such a big gap in between the releases?
Money, everything was analog still, and Pro Tools didn't really come around till after Northern Distortion. So you really did have to go to a studio to record. And we knew about Jeff Murphy and Gary Klebe, John Murphy from Shoes, the band Shoes. I think we knew about them through Butch and Doug and the Spooner gang. Gary actually mixed the first Spooner record, and but they were always DIY guys and had their own studios during the Shoes days. So we thought, all right, we've got some money now. And we've got a pile of songs that we weren't able to record. So we made the connection with them and recorded Northern Distortion down in Zion, Illinois. Fantastic studio, analog studio.
16 tracks, right?
Yep. It was 24, actually.
24.
Okay. It was 16, but it had changed to 24 before we went down. Big, luscious 24-inch, 2-inch tape. Jeff was fantastic. Is a fantastic engineer, Jeff Murphy. And so we were super happy to get in there and make that record a short order recorder, which unfortunately is gone now too. But yeah.
So that album came out and you had some fresh material. Was there, in between the albums, did you guys sort of take a hiatus at all from Fun with Atoms?
Not really. I think you could say we're continuous for as long as we've been together. We're friends and always playing together, and a lot of times we just look at this as bowling night. We don't really belong to clubs or
Right.
anything like that. So this is our bowling night when we get together and practice. And
And the scenes were changing, music scenes were changing too.
Yeah.
I mean, Lefties closed up during that period of that gap between the albums, and it's just we're kind of hunkering down and writing songs and playing random gigs, and
raising family.
yeah, raising kids.
Well, they always say that that Butch, when grunge came out, of course, some call him the godfather of grunge. I mean, how did that affect? Obviously, everybody was all of a sudden like playing this dirty electric kind of screaming music. That had to kind of change the audience a little bit. What shows were kind of being put together. It was more like grungy bands and alternative sounding bands.
Yeah, it jumped out. I remember hearing the Nirvana song. I knew it was out there, and driving in my car, and then all of a sudden you hear this song and it just jumps out, and you say to yourself, this has got to be Nirvana, because it's just so different. And that's what I think helped change things, is just having REM did the same thing. I'm driving in my car and I hear, oh, this has got to be this new band, and it's just, that's how the change happens. It's just so different, and it jumps out at you when you hear it.
Well, then in 2010, you put out the album Smart. And that's I really like that album a lot. And the Smart title for that, was that because of Smart Studios, or was it just a title you liked?
I think so.
Yeah.
How'd that come
Yeah,
about?
maybe a little metaphoric, but
Tongue in cheek.
but really just a nod. We were, I think, one of the last bands that got to go in there. I mean, there were boxes full of stuff upstairs. They were in the process of moving and packing things up, sadly, but we were finishing up our tracking in our individual studios at home, and we kept checking, are you going to be open for a little while longer?
Yeah, the news releases were
couple
out that
weeks.
they were
Yeah,
closing.
right.
And
So then Mike Zirkle mixed it through all their wonderful analog equipment down at Smart. So yeah, it was kind of a nod to the studio as they were going out.
There's a
And,
track on there called "Really Happy" that I really like.
Oh.
Like as far as but it's a great track, and like it was writing a track like that. It did sound different from the earlier releases. It sort of had more of a distorted sound, I guess. You were still kind of, it had the jangly, but not as much as like Main Street, and
Yeah.
you can kind of see a progression, or not really progression, but a change over time from album to album, which is it's always good to hear.
Yeah, I think when we spanned that long of a period of time, and music changed during that time, and so I think we evolved a little bit in what we liked, what was going on around us. I think a big departure was Northern Distortion. We had 24 tracks to work with, and we just loved doing overdubs and being able to put things in. It was kind of like our Abbey Road, with a lot of things that we could play with, and we had a lot of time in the studio there. Spent a lot of time recording that one. So it was different, quite different. But then Smart, we were sort of back to our own Pro Tools devices, and a little bit more limited. So I think that one harkened back a little more to Main Street, that record. Maybe with the exception of the one you mentioned.
So was that what was different about that song compared to the
Really happy.
Yeah.
We played that one live quite a bit, and it just kind of got a goofy reaction, kind of a fun reaction, and it was always fun to play and sing. So we kept it on the record, but maybe a little more rock and roll.
Yeah.
Working from home too, especially with drums. When you're in the studio, you got to put the drums, and what you do right now is going to be the drum track for the whole album, and so that's where it starts. And so there's a lot of pressure to get a take done in an hour or 2 takes, whatever. At home, you can kind of just do it when you feel like it. You can
Right.
do 10 takes. It's not costing you anything, so it's more relaxed. I think that's what I liked about Smart, is just being able to take my time on drums, and then I'd take the files and I'd put them up on Dropbox or whatever we used at the time, and send it out to the band. And
Right.
Dan would start working on bass. He'd have the drums, and it was just a great way to layer things, and we just kept everything at Rick's house, so that was the master Pro Tools, and so everything ended up at Rick's, and so we could just work on things and get it the way we liked it.
As far as the songwriting process goes, how does that typically occur? Are you guys all coming up with ideas, or is it mostly Rick?
Rick and Dan primarily. I threw a song in there for Smart, but primarily Rick and Dan. But typically, if Rick gets an idea or Dan gets an idea, they'll put it on a click track and then put a guitar and vocals. And when we get the core of the song, then like with Really Happy, we had the progression down. We were playing it live. I did that without any accompaniment. I just put it down to a click track and played the drum track. Others, I'd play along with their demo to a click to get the drums started. And then once I had a drum track I liked, then that'd be the final drum track. And we'd get it over to Rick's and then just start layering right from there.
We kind of learned as we went along because none of us really knew Pro Tools or that process coming into, because we started the whole project on Rick's 8-track tape machine, and it broke. And at that point, we had to, it's like, okay, well, now what do we do? Fix the machine.
Dan's always been kind of the gearhead, working with cassettes, bouncing cassette to cassette to write a song, to get it down. God, even way back to the 80s. But,
right.
You were the first to have the Cubase. He was the first to have.
Just playing around, with the early versions of DAW, it's, it was fun. But, then it became serious. It's like, okay, now we really have to learn how to do this. And between the three of us, we all learned little things. And it's like bringing into the session. It's like, I figured this out. If you do this in Pro Tools, you can grab a whole chunk and move it around. And, it's like learning all the tricks, buying books, reading through them. And it was a lot of fun and a great learning process. But we weren't even sure how to piece things together. I mean, because we're used to the analog recording and bass and drums recording live, we kind of fell into the sequence of, Rick and I would come up with our ideas, and you'd put your, scratch everything, on a recording, and give Kurt a click track on, so everything. All the instruments and scratch vocals and stuff are left side, and the click track is right side, and then Kurt would put his drums on it. But we'd still have to, do rehearsals to get the arrangements down and stuff. So we knew pretty much what we were going to do musically with the songs and collaborate on, bridges and rhythms and speed and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Are you guys currently working on any new songs?
Yeah.
Never stops, really.
Would that be one that you would do at like a home studio as well versus a studio?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we're planning to do it the same way and then find a place to mix it the same method that we used last time, just so we can use some real good analog gear as well for the mixing and some outboard gear. We tend to record everything real dry with no effects, just so that somebody else can have kind of a blank slate, to use some good outboard gear on it.
Yeah.
And that's what we did on Smart. Everything was real dry. But yeah, this is really cool down here. I wish people could see it. But we had a similar situation like at my house where my studio is. It's in a soundproof room and everything, but just outside we have a little rehearsal space. And so we would just step out and say, let's hash through this part of this song and let's just figure this out. And then we'd go back in. And so we had that luxury as well, as a band, just to be able to, let's just play through this and get more immediacy of this song before we go in and record it. So we ran a lot of Pro Tools on that. Just we had mics out there, so we'd kind of record that and say, well, there's some spontaneity here that we don't want to lose. And we could kind of go back and say, yeah, that was it right there.
Yeah.
We have to make sure we capture that. Because sometimes it can get sterile, in the studio, and you forget what the original motivation and spontaneity was. So we try to capture as much of that just by playing it live.
Kurt, you mentioned that there was a question, or not a comment, that you guys aren't talking about how well you went over in France. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Well, again, with the album being out there, it gets you exposure, and I'm not sure how this came about, but there was Radio France got a copy of that, and I think 2 or 3 of the songs charted in France, and at the end of 84, 85, whatever year it was, I think we were number 2 on Radio France, and so
Yeah.
that's
And
what I
somebody
remember.
sent us a random letter, right? Because we had a address, a post office box or something on there. And we got a letter, and we had to take it to somebody who could translate French for us.
Oh, some reviews, things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Well, you guys are going to have to put the headphones on because we have a question, a calling question.
All right.
It's like somebody wants to know who's on my coffee mug. So I've got the old Elvis on mine. They got the young, handsome Elvis on theirs.
Gold LeMay.
But thanks for the hospitality, Andy. This is awesome.
So you are on the line with Fun with Adams. What's your question?
Yeah, I was interested in the recording process, and something I've always wondered is during the mix down process, when do you decide that enough is enough and to let it go, or is that like a constant ongoing battle? Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
That's a good
Awesome question. Yeah, thank you for calling in. And, that's a real good question. I don't think anything is, well, of course, added or deleted during the mix down. I think we go into a mix definitely to really anchor the drums and bass and get that in a good place. Get that really in a good place. But then after that, to try not to lose the hook value by over mixing, to really promote the hook, if we can identify what that part is in the song.
Yeah.
Typically, I think people that mix the song don't want the band in the room, and we've had the luxury of being there when they're mixing. And like Rick said, you start with drums, get that good sound, good mix, add bass, add rhythm guitar, and then get the hook in there. And
Yeah. As far as knowing when you're done, that, it's like you could go on forever. There is like, no, it's who's going to tell you you're done? You have to have somebody being the producer in the group that says, okay, that we've reached what we want, and let's go on to the next song. Come back and listen to what we've done later and see if because your perspective gets a little skewed from hearing the same song over and over and over again with minuscule changes to the mixes. You tend to lose where you were and comparison, and there's still things that I listen to that we settled on that are like, I wish we could have just gone through that one more time, but it is what it is. And
there's things you throw out too. I know there's a lot of layering, guitars particularly, and so you kind of pick the sound that you want and kind of bury it where you need it. And there's times you just throw out a part because it doesn't fit in the mix. And from the drums perspective, at the end of the mix, it may need a tambourine or a shaker or something like that. And Butch was really good at advising on that. It's like, let's put a little shaker in there. And, at the end of the mix, that's kind of where the sweetening comes in the drum part. But I don't know, from a guitar standpoint, what do you think?
Yeah, from a guitar standpoint, I think, one thing about mixing that surprised us initially was how quiet you mix. You don't want to fatigue the ears, so we mix real quiet. And then you look at stereo perspective as well, panning left and right if there's any malting going on. With guitar tracks, we can get that stereo perspective. But then we would always put it on a cassette and go out in the car and listen to the car because we wanted to hear the mix before we accepted it, as people were likely to hear it. And then we would always listen to it on a little monaural speaker about this big. And so it can sound really good in the studio on fantastic equipment, but it has to sound good to the ears and the methods that people are going to use to listen to it in the real world. So we would always A, B, and C and D it, on different speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we wouldn't get a loud mix until it was all done. A lot of the mixing is done very quietly, and just make sure you can hear everything at a soft volume. And then when you got it mixed, then you can have fun and listen to it really loud.
Well, again, thank you for the question. That was a great question. How has Green Bay played into your songwriting and just your musical career? I know we talked about Lefties, but are you incorporating a lot of your life experiences in Green Bay into your song lyrics in general?
I think so. I think on Main Street especially, we kind of, I had a business on Main Street. I've been in the dental lab business on the side for a long time, and my lab was on Main Street. And Lefties was on Main Street, so it seemed like we lived our life along Main Street and got to know a lot of the characters and personalities on that sort of vibrant street at the time, and so maybe that's how the name came about.
Yeah, I remember you talking about Main Street. Every town has a Main Street, so it's a common theme throughout the United States. About that.
Yeah, some of it is a little dark, but we, we live in a winter climate, and there is some maybe a little bit of a nod to the harsh winters, and
yeah.
A little. I think you used to go up deer hunting. I think
Way back
ice
100 years
and
ago.
snow was a product of sitting in a deer blind, I think, for a weekend, kind of.
yeah, a lot of winter stuff.
You guys have played a lot of shows. Is there a show that sticks out as being the most memorable show for you?
I've got one. We used to, around Green Bay, we'd play a lot of proms, so there were a lot of high schools to play proms. And there was a boys' Catholic school on the west side of Green Bay, and there was a boys' Catholic school in De Pere, and then the girls' Catholic school was in the middle of Green Bay, and the academy had a prom, and so all those high schools came together at that one prom, and so this gym was just filled with people, and it was about the time we put the album out, and so that was a good crowd for us, and that's probably one of the most memorable shows I had. It was just the charge of the stage. I think they pushed the stage back as they came towards us, and the mic stands are rocking, and just a good experience.
Kurt, Rick?
Yeah, Summerfest. We played some, Summerfest shows. City Center Theater was cool in Green Bay. We used to play a lot of shows, and we opened for a lot of bands back in the day.
You played some shows with Cheap Trick we were talking about.
Yeah, Cheap Trick. We did some shows. We had the same manager for a little while down in Madison, so we got hooked up there. Bodines were taken off at the time. We played quite a few shows with them. And Kurt mentioned the NACA concert. So we played a lot of college shows, and the way you do it, you go to the NACA convention, and there's a stoplight in front of you. It's red, green, and yellow, and you get a certain amount of time to play. And all the agents from the colleges come, the delegates for the entertainment committees and whatever, and they just do this mass buying thing of all the bands. So you get like 20 minutes, and when the red light goes on, you have to be done. No exceptions. So we would do those, and then after we'd get all these bookings, all over all of the colleges, Wisconsin, Illinois.
There must have been an energy playing colleges that you couldn't get at Lefties.
It was fun because they all had radio stations at the time.
Mm-hmm.
College radio was really big, and they were playing our kind of music, and they knew our music really well when we got there. So the reception was always real good.
It's also about the time when drinking age changed around the States, and it used to be 18 years old to be able to go to a bar and see a band and drink. And then once that changed, then the college was nice because they could get that atmosphere while you're playing at your college at the Commons, wherever they have the bands.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, Dan, did you say what your favorite show was yet?
I guess City Center. There were a couple of gigs that we did at City Center that were pretty packed crowd, and just really, watching these young kids climb up on the stage and stage dive out into the crowd. It was pretty awesome, you know.
We did a show it was the old Carlton that burned down, and so said, you guys have this gig, you know, but you're going to be the backup band to this Elvis impersonator and a Buddy Holly. And, well, what songs are they going to play? Well, we don't know until we get there for sound check. So we had to predict what songs the Elvis guy would do and the Buddy Holly guy. But we nailed it. It was really fun. We did our research, and, you know, it's 3-chord stuff for the most part. But it was a good adrenaline rush, you know, to get up there. And the Elvis guy yelled at me because I was supposed to be James Burton, right? And James Burton always stood like 4 feet behind to my left. You know, you're on the wrong damn side.
And the attention to detail that's
It's like this guy had crazy attention to detail, but no rehearsing at all. You know, we wung it, but that was a fun gig.
These guys are always hanging their toes over the stage. I guess that didn't go over too well.
Yeah, right. Especially when they told us that the first number was the theme from the 2001 Space Odyssey. It's like, you realize we're a 3-piece group, right? You know, it's like there are no violins or anything, you know, no orchestration, but we pulled it off somehow.
Yeah, it was really fun.
I'm impressed that you guys have remained true to when you started as a 3-piece and didn't pull in anybody else to like fill in, you know, to make it sound more like the recordings. But it's really impressive. It's awesome. We had a question here from Frank Anderson. He said he first met. He first met. I believe he's talking about Kurt at a Spanic Boy video shoot that he was working on for Strange World.
Yes.
And he wanted to know if you could tell us about your time touring with the Spanic Boys.
I don't want to take anything away from what we're doing here now, but we had backed up Spanic Boys at City Center, and at the time Spanic Boys were looking to replace the rhythm section, so they asked if I'd want to come down and play with them a little bit, so I did, and ended up playing with them for about 3 years, touring.
Oh.
Recording, I think I'm on 2 of their discs, Strange World, and then another disc after that, but yeah.
So that must have affected Fun with Atoms a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it did. But it was a good opportunity, and I'm always of the mind frame of, you know, try anything, you know. But
look, collectively, the three of you you're in a band called Carbon Road. Like, what? How did this band get started? And was there an obvious play on Carbon and Atoms between the two names?
No,
I don't think so.
not at all.
So it started, we were, Fun with Atoms, we were just kind of, there's not a lot of gigs, you know, and we were playing, but, you know, it's just tough out there for all original stuff. And so I had a friend of mine that just said, we need a bass player in a group. There was the duo, Betsy and Josh, were a duet. And they wanted a backing band to fill everything out and do bigger gigs and things like that. So I filled in for them, and then they needed a new drummer, and I said, hey, I know a guy that plays drums, you know, and asked Kurt, and Kurt got on board, and then things were kind of dragging along, and we needed a new guitar player, and it's like, well, you know, we know a guitar player. And then 2 weeks later, we're up and playing on the road and, you know, getting gigs and stuff. And then COVID hit, and then our Betsy got pregnant. And it's like one thing after another. We've been together for 5 years doing that, but really only playing for the last couple of years, you know. So
is it kind of fun to get out and play the cover songs and sort of be a backing band instead of
it's really fun
standing behind the originals?
Yeah, it is, and you know, cover bands kind of get a rap, but you got to go there before you can write your own music. You know, you got to play other people's songs to know what works and where to put the kick drum and snare drum, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, we've known each other. We're friends for ages, and Betsy and Josh are, you know, kindred spirits. We're like family. We get along with them great. So it's just a great time more than anything.
And you guys did Mile of Music. Was it Mile of Music 5 that you played?
I can't remember. We did a couple in a row, two or three in a row, but they were I think maybe right around 5-ish.
How was that experience to get in front of a big crowd in Appleton for that festival?
It's a great festival.
Fantastic,
It's great. Yeah.
That would have been right around the time that Main Street came out a few years before I think he did Wild Music.
The
I'm not sure.
reissue, Smart had just come out. I think that's how helped us get in, because we had Smart as a new release.
And then Appleton is a place that you guys don't play a whole lot.
No, Appleton's always been real good to us. We used to play at the college down here in Mongo's. There was a place called Mongo's.
Great, yeah.
It was a pretty cool upstairs loft, and we played there quite often. Between Main Street and Northern Distortion, kind of in those years. Met some real cool people down here, and again, all the music scene down here is good. Like you guys, and Rebel Waltz, Twisting Egyptians, and all the bands that we hung out with for years.
Do you have any hobbies outside of music? And Kurt, you're an archivist. Do you have any hobbies that you enjoy doing as well as music?
Yes, just outdoor. I love being outdoors, swimming in a lake, riding a bike, running, hanging out.
Yeah, fitness, remodeling. I love to remodel, tear things apart and rebuild things. That's about it.
Yeah.
Looking for something real twisted, like I make lampshades out of
taxidermy.
Dismembered bodies.
We were always the band that head to the bookstore. We'd roll into town and we'd do our sound check and go to the bookstore.
Right.
Yeah, so it's been pretty low key.
So no crazy stories?
Throwing stuff out of hotel windows.
No.
We had our day, there were fun times, yeah.
So the fun with Adam's name, I mean, was that a science-y kind of thing? Like, who came up with the name? That was Rick?
I think we had a little brainstorming session, but I don't know.
And technically, the real way is the
maybe.
W/, right? But you can't use that with some of the computer things, like
right.
Spotify, I think.
Yeah, didn't think that far in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Spotify and things like that, the / doesn't work. But we didn't look that far ahead.
Yeah, spell out the width.
It's like file names that kicks back in air on when you're trying to save a file.
Right.
Is there any advice you guys have for people that are learning an instrument or that want to start a band? Any wisdom that you can bestow upon them?
Use real amps and real guitars.
And drums.
And drums. Oh, yes. Real instruments. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, play all the time, and just find people to constantly play with. Be humble and let the muse guide you, and nothing else. Just be in it for the love of music, and start writing too. I think people delay that, thinking they can't do it, but anyone can do it. Write a good pop song, and Kurt talked about the cover thing. Play as much as you can, and sometimes that's the vehicle to really hone your skills. Get out and play all the time on weekends. Play other people's music, and you learn how to play a lot of different genres that way. And you really can get your chops doing that. There's no shame in doing that, really. And at the same time, just be working on original music. And you can get Pro Tools now, and $9.99 a month. You can rent it now and get a lease and just start dabbling in that.
And there's so many other things too, like the apps on cell phones that come out. You have GarageBand and things like that. You can just get started with a multi-track recorder just jam. Put a song on and jam with it. That's the way you learn. I know for learning how to play bass, I guess my advice would be that the pain in your fingers actually goes away after time, so don't be discouraged by the blisters and the bleeding fingers, because after about 5 or 10 years, it actually goes away, right? Then you play for 40 years and it starts coming back again.
Yeah, different pain.
Yeah.
So 40 years together. I mean, there's got to be things you love about each other and things you don't love about each other. Like, what's the band dynamic like today compared to 40 years ago?
Has it changed?
We're brothers.
Yeah.
And we can finish each other's sentences, really. And I think it's been a long haul. And early on, I don't think we really appreciated how important that was. But now we do. I think we look back, and I don't think we had a master plan to stay together for 40 years. But we just like each other so much, and we have common interests. And now I don't take it for granted. When I play, I just try to appreciate every moment, savor the moment,
Yeah.
And
How long do you think you'll keep Fun with Adams going?
Yeah, forever. I don't see an end to
10 more years, 20 more years.
Yeah.
it. 40?
No, we're working on stuff. We're working on music now. We have a lot of outtakes, demos, a lot of demos piled up, and just kind of reamped my studio at home with a new Mac and new interface. So we're kind of supercharged and ready to get after it again. So we want to.
So we can expect to see some new Fun with Adams releases in the next year or two, maybe?
I would think so.
That's the
Yeah.
plan. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
The cool thing about being together for so long is like your dream when you're young and learning and getting in bands and stuff is like, I want to be a full-time musician. And then you get a real job and, all that stuff, raising families. And then, Rick and I are both retired. Kurt's going to be retired. Hope I'm not blowing it for you.
Yeah.
But, now we can actually go back to what our original dreams were, to be full-time musicians and work on music. And it's awesome, to have the three of us together to be able to do that and take a Wednesday afternoon if we want to get together and do some recording or something,
Any chance of a tour? The Fun with Adams tour now?
Set it up.
Nothing holding you
Yeah.
back soon.
Need a good
Right?
manager.
Well, we just did a thing at the Brown County Library a couple of weeks ago, and that was that was more than a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it was February.
in February.
Time flies. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was great, and that we packed they have a nice auditorium in the
Yes.
basement of the library, and
Very nice.
nice stage and lights and sound system and everything, and it was really encouraging that we you have no idea who's going to show up. I mean, we haven't played in a while, and we're watching the whole theater filled up. I mean, it was like there was hardly a empty seat in the place, and it's like, well, this is pretty cool, And then we had played the night before with Carbon Road, and then did this thing at like 11 o'clock in the morning the next day. And it's just so much adrenaline and energy went into playing. It's like when we got all done, we played an hour and a half, and I felt like, holy man, I just drained. I mean, there's so much more energy goes into the three of us playing together, because we got to fill all the holes, and we're in Carbon Road, we're like, I know for bass parts, I'll play one beat to the measure kind of bass parts, and it's it's so much easier to play so many more songs with Carbon Road than it is to play an hour and a half with Fun with Adams. It's just it's an energy sapping thing. It's like, I'd like to be able to do it forever, but come a time
Yeah.
we have to slow it down a few beats.
Well, here's the last question I have for you guys, and I thank you for doing this. Big fan of the
Thank
band.
you.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having us.
your time. The last question: what are you guys the most proud of over the span of 40 years of Fun with Adams?
I think I'm most proud that we're still together, that we've, there's little bumps in the road always with every band, but I think we know that the sum is greater than the parts, the individual parts, and we need each other. We've never gotten snit that was so bad that we had to put our instruments down and not play. We understand it. So we're really proud that we were able to really just remain good friends, and super proud of the fact that we met so many nice people that are still loyal to us, and we couldn't have done it without them, and just made such good friends along the way. Proud of the records and the writing. I don't know, your turn.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. So yeah, we're finishing our own sentences, but it's just being together, and just you can count on one hand the bands that are still together after this. It's us, a lot of national bands that have stuck together. So that's what I'm proud of.
Yeah, I'm proud of the fact that even with Carbon Road, we'll get people come out that recognize us, from Fun with Atoms, and they'll say, "Man, I had that Main Street album." In fact, on the way over here, I was playing it in my car, and it's like, oh my God, it's like, and people telling us that was a big part of my life, listening to the Main Street album. It's like, you guys it was just an epic record, and it's like, we weren't even thinking in those terms back then. It's like, we got a lot of great ideas, and let's just get it down on a recording and get it out there. And it's like, it just makes me proud to know that after playing all this time, that we have some legacy that we're leaving behind, that people passing it on to their kids, I hope.